And the thing about triggers is triggers are not your partner's responsibility. You can't say you triggered me. Like, you have to own your triggers. They don't know what your triggers are. They weren't a part of your past. They're a part of your present. So your triggers are yours. And yeah, there might be certain things that your partner does that flushes up a painful feeling from the past. That is yours to deal with. Now, you can tell your partner, so when you say that, because my dad used to say that, or my dad used to shout, it does bring up that feeling for me. And if you have a good partner who really cares about your well-being, they'll say, oh, wow, I didn't realize that landed on you that way, and I'm so sorry. I don't ever want you to be afraid.
Welcome to the Daniele Hage Podcast. I'm your host, Daniele Hage. Daniele is my mother-in-law and Nini to my three girls. She is a pastor, speaker, and founder of Dynamic Traits. She has over 40 years experience in family and marriage relationships. She's been married for 43 years to Steve Hage, who travels the world preaching the gospel, and together they pastor a church in Laguna Niguel, California. So welcome, Daniele.
Thank you.
Today we're going to talk about what holds couples back from true connection. And for those of you that have joined us today, thank you. If you like what you hear at any time, please press that subscribe button so you make sure you get more content coming your way. But let's get right into it. Let's talk about what is holding couples back from true connection.
Yeah. Well, again, that's a loaded question because every couple's different and everybody's dynamic is different. Every couple's arrangement is different, and depending on personality types, and there's so many variables. But off the top of my head, I would say some of the main things, because in order to have a partnership, be a team, become one, be married, there has to be some sort of connection, an intimate connection. If you're going to keep a relationship together long-term, a marriage together long-term, then you've got to be able to connect. And there's a lot of things that cause people to disconnect, okay? One of the things is fear, okay? A fear of rejection. Because true intimate connection means you have to be authentic, you have to make yourself vulnerable. Mm-hmm. The only way to have a true intimate connection is through vulnerability. And that's scary for people. It's scary. It takes courage to be vulnerable, because what you're doing is you're opening yourself up. It's like you unzip and you're just naked in front of your partner saying, this is me. This is all I got. This is everything. And you don't know if they're going to accept you, reject you, like you, dislike you. And that's scary, especially when you first are, getting into a relationship. And I think, when you're first getting into a relationship, you need to go slow and, you give them a little bit, tell them a little bit about how do they handle that? Can they handle it? And then you feel safe enough to give a little bit more, right? And and then it keeps growing. You give a little bit more. Wow, they handled that well. Wow, they didn't judge me because I told them one of my biggest fears or one of my biggest downfalls or, whatever. And so when people feel safe in a relationship, they're more willing to open up and share, their fears, their dreams, their hopes, their traumas, their childhood pain, all the different kinds of stuff.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about how men and women relate to fear?
Yeah, very differently.
Yeah.
Okay. For men, again, because men aren't all that emotional. I'm not saying they're not emotional or have no feelings. Again, I have to stress that because this gets twisted a lot. But they because they are not driven emotionally, if for their fear, they deal with it. Okay. Whatever, they take action. Okay, to deal with fear. Women, for like a woman who raises her voice or screams or gets mad at a man, rarely does a man feel like his life is at stake.
Yeah.
Or his life is in jeopardy, right? But for a woman, if a man raises his voice, you want to bring the worst out of a woman, shout, raise your voice, get angry in front of her, okay? Or angry at her. That's very scary. It's terrifying for a woman. And again, because we know men can hurt us. Men have, and especially a woman who has been mistreated or abused in the past, maybe it wasn't even from her current partner. Maybe it was from her dad. Maybe she got beat. Maybe it was from an ex-boyfriend. Maybe it was from her brother or, somebody other man in her life. But again, depending on her filter, that could be a scary thing for a man just to raise his voice. Again, we know men are bigger and stronger. Women are smaller and weaker. So guys don't understand that. And even something that I have dealt with is I've had men say, wait a minute, so you're telling me when I get loud, at a party or at a sporting event, or you're watching sports at home and he's yelling at the refs or, whatever, that could scare a woman. Just because it's a loud voice, and she, even though she like in the natural knows you're not yelling at her, it's her instincts. Okay, something in her instincts says like take cover, dodge, like wow, he's a big man, he could hurt me. And there was a time, and even today, there's women have been raped, they've been molested, they've been beaten, they've been abused, they've been enslaved, they've been trafficked, and a lot of that stuff isn't happening to men. Yes, I know it has happened to men, but for the most part, it's the women that are being enslaved and trafficked and so on, okay? Raped, that kind of thing. So our instinct doesn't forget that. Men have done that to women. So we're just a little bit more guarded when it comes probably to a big, strong man, even though women want a big, strong, masculine man, but we want it for protection, okay? We want that for protection. So any kind of a fear of rejection could keep you from connecting, a fear of getting too close because I got hurt in the past relationship. I was in love and then I got hurt or I got cheated on. And so getting too close can be really painful. And it can bring up stuff from the past, flush up things, painful triggers from the past. And the thing about triggers is triggers are not your partner's responsibility. You can't say, you triggered me. Like, you have to own your triggers. They don't know what your triggers are. They weren't a part of your past. They're a part of your present. So your triggers are yours. And yeah, there might be certain things that your partner does that flushes up a painful feeling from the past. That is yours to deal with. Now, you can tell your partner, so when you say that, because my dad used to say that, or my dad used to shout, it does bring up that feeling for me. And if you have a good partner who really cares about your well-being, they'll say, oh, wow. I didn't realize that landed on you that way, and I'm so sorry. I don't ever want you to be afraid in my presence. And that's good communication, and that's validating your partner's feelings, okay? So any kind of fear, a fear of loss. Well, if I get this connected and this close and committed, and what if we end up divorced and I lose my house and my family and my marriage? I fear any kind of loss is scary, okay? And I think probably that's the number one thing people fear most is loss. Yeah. Loss of a relationship, loss of a loved one, loss of your finances, loss of health. And probably the second thing people fear most is I won't be able to handle it. I won't be able to handle the loss. And I just want to say that we're way stronger than we give ourselves credit for. A lot of times we can handle a lot, but you don't know until you go through it. Yeah. And until you come through it, that, wow, I handled that, right? I handled the rejection. I handled the shouting or whatever. I'm going to be okay. So again, this is just part of life and being human. I think pride can keep us from connecting, and pride is an unwillingness to be known for who you really are. And so that's a big one. And getting the pride and the ego out of the way. And again, allowing yourself to be your most authentic self, who you really are, which means you have to be vulnerable, which usually when people are vulnerable, I know when I see men being vulnerable, and men have a problem with that, I know. Being vulnerable and showing emotion isn't their specialty. But when men are vulnerable, I find that very attractive. I think it's sexy. I think it's manly. I think it's strong. It's masculine. And I think women that can't handle a man's vulnerability, I think they're immature. I think those women are immature. And I think it has more to do with their issues than it does the man being vulnerable. And men, you have to be careful who you're vulnerable with. You have to trust that person. So don't be vulnerable with someone you don't trust, right? And that trust is built on as you connect and get closer and closer and deeper into your relationship. And a woman, I hear men say all the time that, well, women think vulnerability is weak in men and they'll use it against them. those are unhealthy women. Okay? Women that do that are not emotionally healthy women. And I think they're going off their own issues, their own hurts to do that to a man. And ladies, if you want a man to open up to you and you want to be close, because women do, they want to be connected, they want to be close to men, then you need to be careful. You need to be a safe place for him to open up. When he starts talking, you keep your mouth shut. You don't interrupt him. And if you are quiet long enough, you may hear him say things that you've never heard him say before. If you're quiet long enough, when he takes a breath, that's not your cue to jump in and start talking and giving your opinion. When he takes a breath, count to 10. He might have something more to add. Or when he stops talking, you could say, anything else? Anything else? You may hear him say so many things just because you're listening and he knows that you're listening, and that's his cue to keep sharing. But when you interrupt, when you tell him you can't feel that way, or you start criticizing or condemning what he's saying, his opinions, his thoughts, good luck getting him to ever open up to you anymore. I've made the mistake, and I still make the mistake at times.
I was just going to ask, what would you say to a couple who's been married?
Yes.
They're maybe 10 plus years, they've got a couple kids, they haven't had these tools, they're starting to become aware and say, oh my gosh, I've been emasculating him, or every time he does open up, I've let my fear overcome and I start to criticize, and now we do have a disconnect. What would you say to that couple?
I would say apologize. I find myself apologizing all the time to my husband when I do that. He'll start talking to me and I will interrupt because I'm jumping to conclusions, going to finish his thought because I think I know what he's going to say, which sometimes is the furthest thing from what he's actually going to say. And you know what my husband does? He'll go, okay. I'm leaving. I'm not talking. And I immediately go, oh my God, I am so sorry. I interrupted. I am so sorry. Please keep talking. I'll keep my mouth shut. And he'll go, all right. But if I do it too much, he'll just walk away. And when I say leave, doesn't mean he's leaving the marriage. But he'll walk into the other room. And so it's okay. We're human. We make mistakes. I am so sorry. I know I shouldn't have interrupted. I'm sorry I interrupted. Please keep going. I really want to hear what you have to say. And when you do that, it's genuine, he'll keep talking, I think. I mean, my husband does. Do you find that? Do you find that with you and Christian? Do you ever interrupt, or does it ever irritate him?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Or if I'm being critical, or because I have that in my nature to be critical and naggy. But I've also known couples who it's become calloused. It's not a daily practice of apologizing and trying to do better. So they have been married for 10 years or so. And they're just kind of living as roommates. It's just become so calloused, and neither of them feel like that apology is right there on the surface. And I think you've talked about it before, like somebody's just got to start the cycle.
Break the cycle.
Yes. And start. And because especially going back to a little bit of fear, men relate to their fear when it comes to protecting and providing for their family, whereas women relate to fear when it comes to the personal safety of their home and their children. And just being able to break that cycle, because if we can honor what he's doing, honor the protecting and providing, he'll want to cherish and send love our way, but it's a cycle.
And something else I think that keeps people from connecting again, and that could be pride. Like neither is willing to break the cycle. Neither is willing to go first and humble themselves. And remember,
because it could hurt again.
You could get hurt again. But you know what? You're in a relationship. Yes, there's going to be hurts. Yes, you're going to make mistakes. You and your partner, because you are human. If you hold a grudge forever, who wants to be in that kind of relationship where you hold grudge? You just got to let things go. You have to factor in forgiveness in any relationship, that you're going to have to forgive and let things go. I heard someone the other day saying, well, what if they say they're sorry, but they keep doing the same thing they're sorry for over and over again? That is somebody that is not holding themselves accountable. They're not taking responsibility. They're not changing their behavior or their actions, knowing it's continuing to hurt their partner. So you might as well say up front, the one that is saying, I'm sorry, but they never change. I'm not going to change. I don't care how you feel, if this makes you feel. And I'm not all in. Because that's basically what you're doing by doing the same thing over and over and over again. And yes, the Bible says we're to forgive 70 times 7 or whatever is it, like you keep forgiving. You can forgive, and we forgive not even for our partner, we forgive for ourselves. It lets you off the hook. It's not letting them off the hook. It's letting you off the hook so that you don't get ugly and bitter and resentful. Okay? That's why you forgive. Now, if the thing you had to forgive is real, it's something that they keep doing, like let's say infidelity. You forgave them. You're going to stay in the relationship. It keeps happening. You don't have to let them back in your bed, okay? You don't even have to stay in the marriage. If it's something where they have broken trust over and over again, it's okay to say lovingly, I forgive you. I will no longer be in this relationship because that's not changing and I can't take that anymore, okay? So if you get to your limit where I just can't take it anymore, he calls you names. Or maybe he struck you or she struck you. And they're apologetic. And you will a lot of times hear people with narcissistic tendencies. First of all, narcissists usually don't apologize. Or if they do, they don't change. But it's okay where was it going with that? Oh, it's okay to lovingly, without judgment, say, I can no longer be in the relationship. Because I know that you've apologized, but you definitely aren't changing, and I can't stay. And again, leaving the relationship, sometimes you're not leaving to manipulate them or to get them to change. You're leaving to get healed, okay? You're leaving so that you can see clearly, so that you can get healing, maybe get some therapy, and give them some space to think about their behavior and what they want. You know, sometimes leaving is the most loving thing a partner could do. And it may not be forever. It may just be for a time. And if they choose not to change or to repair what they have broken, then you don't have to get back together. I know there's a lot of churches and pastors and biblical counselors who will say you have to stay in the marriage. God hates divorce. I disagree. God hates you being mistreated more than he hates divorce, okay? God cares about the person. Yes, he loves marriage, but he loves the person more. And if the person you're married to is mistreating you, abusing you in some way, you do not have to stay in that relationship. You have the freedom to choose. You have the freedom to choose. You need to take care of yourself. You need to protect yourself, and you need to protect your children. Some people say, well, I stayed for the kids. You know what that is teaching your children? This is how, as you're teaching your little girls, it's okay for men to mistreat you and to talk to you in a discounting, degrading way. You're teaching that to your daughter. You don't want her to marry a man like that, but she will. Well, mom stayed, I have to stay, you know? And your boys, you're teaching your boys that this is how men treat women, and it's okay because you're staying. So I don't believe you stay for the kids if you're in an abusive relationship. Yeah. But sometimes women think it's safer to stay in that than to be alone. And I disagree. Those women need to get therapy. They need to get a group of people around them that will hold them up, hold their hands up, encourage them. They need to get healing. Because nobody deserves to be treated in an abusive way. Nobody deserves that.
Yeah.
Rejection, fear, or a fear of rejection, loss, not being accepted, the lack of vulnerability. We hit on that a little bit. But if you're not willing to be known, okay, and be vulnerable, then there's going to be a disconnect there. And again, men, vulnerability is not weakness. Vulnerability is pure strength. Okay. And I know men, I get pushback from this on men, and these are the men that have been hurt. But even those men, I say, you have the courage. You have the courage to go again. Maybe not with that same woman, but maybe a new woman. Okay. Because not every woman's going to do that. I think that is mistreatment. Women who use your vulnerabilities against you. And, there's people that do that, not just women with men, but I had a person in my life for years and years, and it was a female person. And I would confide in this person and make myself very vulnerable and just let my hair down and tell her things that I wouldn't tell anybody else. And a month later, she would bring that up in a group of people and use it against me.
Yeah,
and
it's the worst feeling.
It destroyed me. It was painful. I do know what that feels like. Probably everybody has had an experience at some point. And she would just toss it out there in front of other people. And I would just be cowering. And do you know that I was in a relationship with that person for years and years, but our relationship got more and more distant.
Yeah.
More and more distant over the years, where to now we barely ever even talk. And because it wasn't safe. I realized every time, and it happened over and over again, not once, but every time. There were too many times where I realized I had to smarten up. I had to draw a line, and our relationship was just more, it was friendly, but it wasn't deep because it wasn't safe for me.
Yeah.
And for men who suppress their true emotions, they don't own them, they don't take responsibility for them, they just keep pressing them down. Eventually, that thing that you're pressing down is going to rear its head, and probably in an untimely time, in an untimely manner, and when you least expect it, because you can only hold so many balls underwater at once, right? And it's going to pop up, and it's going to come out in probably a destructive way, where you're angry or you do something to medicate not being able to be your true self, to hold yourself down, maybe with drugs or antidepressants or alcohol, or maybe even, because maybe you feel like you're less of a man because you can't be who you really are in front of people. And that's what causes men to misbehave, to find other avenues for an outlet, another woman, possibly, or they get domineering or over controlling with their family members because they're lacking something. So that's another reason why it's good to be able to share. And if you aren't comfortable sharing with your wife, share with a counselor. Go share with your buddies. Share with a man that you respect. Share with your pastor or somebody. But you've got to also be able to have a safe place where you can share your feelings about things.
Yeah, it makes me thankful that Christian has good men mentors in his life, and that I have good girlfriends, because I do think we need that. And it does help our connection when we have good couples who are surrounding our family, and we're able to have those safe conversations and be able to let our hair down. And he can have manly, masculine leadership conversations with other trusted men who are going to guide him. Iron sharpens iron. Because sometimes I can't handle all those conversations in the right way, or the way he brings it to me. He needs to flesh it out first with another man to get some perspective before having a conversation, whether it's in a way we're leading or transition or job change, or, because it could bring up in me the fear of loss, or the fear of, what's next, or the fear of the unknown.
Yes.
And that's where I can get fearful, let my emotions drive, and start to become naggy and all of that. So I do think, and for me, having women who I can get my words out with, who I can show my true self with, it really does help the connection back at home when I feel seen as well. Somebody's connected with me, and it doesn't all fall on him. Like, I think women have a connection, a need of connection that is also with other women, with our words, with raising our children, and he cannot meet every single need of mine. I just, some things you talk about, I hear say like, oh my gosh, if a couple like that, if it's that serious, they need to just be surrounded with positive people, positive influences, mentors.
Absolutely.
Somebody who's going to help iron sharpen iron before it gets to that point where you're like, I can't do this anymore, I have to leave.
Right. And I heard somebody say years ago that if you have one friend that you trust and feel safe with, man or woman, I mean, if you're married, you have, the woman has a girlfriend, or a mom or a sister, and the man has one friend, that you are rich. Yeah. You are rich. And when this person, and she was an older woman and kind of a relationship coach type person, and I remember thinking, because I had a lot of friends, and I thought, wow, I am wealthy, but I didn't realize how so many people are really alone. Yeah. They don't have a connection, intimate connection with a friend, a girlfriend, or their husband. that they can really confide in and let their hair down. And people that have, betrayed their confidence in the past, and so they're closed up. And, I just think for my girlfriends or people in my life, my daughters, I want to be a safe place. And if they don't feel safe with me, I want to know why. What have I done to make you feel unsafe? Oh my gosh, I want to work on that, because I don't ever want, the people that I love, I want them to feel they can come to me with anything that they want to talk about, and they're not going to be judged. They're not going to be condemned. And I think that's another part of a disconnect, when every time you try to talk about something, that person gets defensive, and you feel like you can never say anything to them because they're gonna get defensive. So we need to have that conversation. What is making you so defensive? The only reason you'd be defensive is because you feel like you're being attacked. What in my approach makes you feel like I'm attacking you? Because sometimes we can't even see it, right? Yeah. So there's probably a lot more things that hinder connection, but these are some of the top ones. So
yeah, these are all, we've had such great conversations today about connection, and went really deep in a lot of areas that people really do struggle with. Now, let's just kind of back it up a little bit. What would you say are just some good daily tools for connection between men and women who are married? Yeah. They've got kids running around, they've got sports schedules going on, and busy work lives, and they're just missing that connection. What are some daily tools that we could put in our toolbox?
Well, I think you have to make your relationship top priority.
Yeah.
Over the kids. Top priority, where you have to connect every single day at some point and have a conversation. How was your day? Yeah. Tell me about your day. What went right? What went wrong? Is there anything, bugging you? Is there anything you need from me? Do you need my input, or do you just need me to listen? Like, just have a daily time you connect. I think throughout the day, couples that send each other little text messages just because. Yeah. Just thinking of you. Just hi, hey. Just want you to know I think of you. I know for my husband and I, he travels a lot. I travel. We connect just verbally, even if we can't physically, or we'll FaceTime each other so that we can see each other's face, at least hear each other's voice.
Yeah, he likes to see your face.
Yes, he FaceTimes me a lot. But we connect regardless of where he is in the world, or I am, every single day. Usually 2, 3, 4 times a day. Yeah. We really do. We just want to know what's going on. How you doing? It's not that we don't trust each other. It's not we're trying to see what they're doing, but we're genuinely interested. Yeah. How's your day? Who do you talk to? How are they? What's going on? Just on a regular basis. And we have been that way our whole marriage. Date night, once a week. You need to make it a priority. Now, I know there's going to be weeks that go by where you just can't fit it in, but that time away, whether your date night could be, the kids are fine, we're going to go for a walk for a half hour. We're going to sit at the park, or we're going to sit outside in the backyard. Kids, you're not allowed to come out.
Yeah, that's good.
We need an hour or 30 minutes or whatever it is. Again, whatever you're both in unity on. It could be a coffee date. It could come meet me here real quick. I think doing those little special overtures, call your husband in the middle of the day and say, hey, I got a hotel room. Can you take lunch and come meet me? And make, I'm not kidding.
I didn't expect that one.
Those little special things that are like out of the blue, but like just for fun, to keep the love alive, the romance alive, the connection alive. Yeah. If you don't have a lot of time to get together and talk, just maybe make a daily habit of telling your husband or your wife something you appreciate about them.
Yeah, that's good.
I just want you to know that I appreciate you go to work. Think about the women who have husbands that refuse to work. Or I just want you to know how appreciative I am that you are such a good father to our kids. Like when my husband, he would date our daughters, and when they got to a certain age, even from a young age, to kind of start teaching them, this is how men treat women on dates. And I felt so loved. I felt loved. I wasn't a part of the date, but knowing that my husband spent time with our daughters and the way he loved them and how excited they would be when Daddy was home, it said something to me, because I didn't have that with my dad. And I wanted my daughters not to miss out on stuff I felt I missed out on. And my husband was all about it. It wasn't a chore to him. He enjoyed it. Take him to a movie, take him to dinner, take him for an ice cream, whatever. Not a big deal. Yeah. But anyway, that's getting off the question. But I think just intentionalizing, prioritizing your spouse,
Yeah.
even over the kids,
Yeah.
is huge.
That's good.
However,
That's
that
good.
looks to you.
I saw a meme or something the other day that said a man who kisses his wife as he's headed out the door every morning to work will live an extra 3 to 4 years.
And I
don't know about that.
I heard something. My husband and I used to practice this too. We've kind of forgotten about
How
it
do you
now.
measure that?
But yeah, it was a marriage coach or something, and they said you always kiss them goodbye and you kiss them hello, and you linger for a minute in that kiss, not just, but like a lingering. I think they gave a certain amount of time, but just that hug and that kiss. I'm not saying you have to tongue it, make out, but I mean just that it's a genuine hug and just a little kiss. Good night and hello. When they walk out the door and when they come in.
Yeah.
So just those little things that we forget about, that we start taking,
For granted. Yes,
we
yes,
do.
that's good.
Especially, you've been married a long time. You take each other for granted. It becomes very familiar, but that's why we need to intentionalize it.
Yeah.
And, even you just listening to this podcast, because we're all about relationships, share it with your significant other and say, hey, honey, these are some good ideas. You want to do this? Like, get them on board. You're not sharing it to scold them
start it.
or tell them what they're not doing.
Yeah.
But hey, I learned something new today. I want to start implementing that into our relationship. Okay.
Or just start it. Don't even tell
Or
them what
don't
you're
even
doing.
say it.
Just
You
start it.
just start it. That's
Start
right.
the
That's right.
little text message
Yeah.
at 10 a.m. saying, hey, I love you.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Set your alarm. Text husband.
Yes.
Text wife.
so good. If you liked today's episode, if something spoke to you today, make sure you share it. Press that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you know when a new episode is coming your way. Danielle is very active on social media, so make sure you follow her on Instagram and Facebook and leave her any comments. And she'd love to interact with you on social media. See you there.